Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari on this Friday, and we'll take a look this morning. I thought that all things economic, take a look at the economy, take a look at oil theft and the Naira value, which, as you know, most of us who are not even economists, but somehow just about everybody understands or knows the value of the Naira. Not everybody knows the official rate, which is cited at 426 Naira to the dollar, but the parallel market, or aka the black market rate, that is where you or I shall be getting it from should we need it desperately, then it is between 702 and 711 Naira to the dollar. Compare that, 711 Naira to the dollar as opposed to 426. Some people are getting it at 426. Other people, sorry, you're going to have to source it at 711. Okay, maybe I made too much about the Naira, about the Naira and the dollar because that's the currency part of it. But our guest, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, he's a political economist and former deputy governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. He'll help us understand all of this and, the havoc it is wreaking with our lives and what, if anything, that we can do about it. Is it to just bear it, grin and bear it? Okay, let me say, first of all, good morning to our guest, Professor Kingsley Moghalu.
Good morning.
And thank you very much for making the time for us this morning. Prof, before we set sail, so to speak, we have, by way of a background report, something we put out on our news bulletin yesterday about oil theft, for instance. So we'll take that and then I'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Commandant of the NSCDC in Delta State is stepping up the fight against crude oil theft and pipeline vandalism, which is now at a worrisome level. The command launched a special tactical team codenamed Operation Show No Mercy to Vandals, which carries out sting operations in Warri and its environ. These 3 suspects were arrested with dual-purpose kerosene and automated gas oil.
Upon 24 hours into their operations, they discovered, busted, and arrested some suspects dealing illegally on petroleum products. So this is why we are here today, to tell the public that the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps is out not only to arrest, but to prosecute and jail everyone who is illegally dealing in the petroleum sector or within the petrol industry.
The raid on this illegal dump site close to Nanjakat in Uwe Council led to the arrest of these 2 suspects. Also, personnel of the Corps apprehended 2 suspects on the Warri-Saple Highway dealing in illegal refined AGO stored in drums. This woman allegedly deals in illegally refined products concealed in sacks and loaded in this vehicle. The driver escaped after citing the NSCDC personnel.
Today, we want to call on every meaningful Nigerians, Deltans to be precise, to avail the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps of every information that could lead to the arrest of these nefarious and barbaric activities of these suspects and hoodlums. It has caused the nation great loss and it has caused its citizens devastating pains.
According to the spokesman of the Corps in the state, all suspects will be charged to court after a thorough investigation and assured that the NSCDC is determined to chase out oil thieves and vandals in Delta State. Ikenna Amechi, TVC News, Warri.
Okay, thanks to Ken Amechi there for that report that went out earlier. And as I said, if you joined us at the top of the program, our guest is Professor Kingsley Moghalu, political economist and former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I dare add that he's also a politician. Okay, over to you, Prof. That story was just illustrating one of the aspects of our subject of discussion, oil theft. Could you put that in context? Everybody knows it's a bad thing, but in terms of the ills of, or what is ailing the economy, how important, how significant is that amongst the other things that are troubling our economy?
Yes, it's oil theft is hugely, hugely important. We lose, estimates say, about 300,000 barrels a day, to oil theft. If you calculate this at an average oil price of about $100, and we were having that for some time, I think now it's in the late 80s. But if you calculate and round up, losing $1 billion of revenue every month. Now, that's huge. $1 billion is about 700 billion Naira. We have an ASU strike. What are they asking for? That they should be paid 1.3 trillion in arrears owed to them based on agreements they had with the federal government. So if you stop oil theft for 2 months, that problem is wiped out. Nigeria is massively indebted. We are now borrowing to service the debt we already owe. Again, if you were not having this oil theft, we would be better able to balance our books and to be able to afford social services and to drive development in this country. So the oil theft problem is a huge problem. It is organized crime, and it says a lot about the state of the Nigerian state, that a full 1/3 of the natural resources on which it relies mainly for foreign exchange, 90%, is stolen. So in the short term, not to talk about the long term, but in the short term, the government must stop the oil theft if this country is to survive, because we're sinking deeper and deeper into very grave economic crisis. And it looks like the government has no source of revenue, because we have a revenue problem. But there are many sources of revenue, including the stolen revenue from the oil thefts.
Well, you just said, among other things, Prof, that the government has to stop this, has to devise a way to stop this. Even in relation to other aspects of our security, the economy and finances is one aspect of it. But only yesterday we were talking about the government's duty to stop all the criminality going around. And in recent times, as you know, we've been hearing more encouraging news. So we were asking the question yesterday that what is it that has brought about this will in government, seeing as we say where there's a will, there's a way. How can this, can the same be said in relation to this matter of oil theft, that government can do it once they indeed do have the will? Or is it one of those, how is it that all the criminals are beating us? They're beating the system, they're beating government, they're beating all the law enforcers?
Well, like you said, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
Some of us have always said that the problems we have with security in this country evidence an absence of political will to secure Nigerians. And it is not surprising that for a combination of reasons, we are now seeing the government trying to get more aggressive against terrorists by taking the fight to the enemy. You can't fight terrorism by fighting a defensive war. Always terrorists are attacking us, like the attacks in Abuja recently, which made very clear that if terrorists overrun Abuja, effectively the Nigerian state has collapsed. I suspect that there might have also been a lot of reactions of panic in the political class itself. People began to move motions of impeaching the president and things like that. Then, of course, the diplomatic community, everybody was worried for their safety. And I think people began to realize that we cannot continue to take excuses anymore. And so we began to see a stronger pushback. Let's hope it's sustained and it increases, because you have to simply wipe out terrorism. It's not, you cannot live with it. You know? I hope that the same thing applies to the oil theft crisis. We're beginning to see signs, again, of a pushback, but it is too early to say whether this will be sustained or whether it will be effective. But I believe that if the government is serious about stopping oil theft, they will stop it.
Okay, all right then. Again, so that sort of parallels what we were talking about yesterday with a bunch of experts that's concluded exactly what you've just said, that should the will exist, this would be a thing of the past. There is the way. We were saying that yesterday in relation to the military getting marching orders to do the needful, and apparently they now have got the marching orders. But Prof, let's move on, so to speak, to the issue of the value of the Naira, which most of us have come to learn that the way you know that is compare it with other global currencies, principally the dollar. And I was just saying at the top of the program that there is this thing we call in Nigeria the official rate, which is cited today at 426 Naira to the dollar. And then there's the either parallel or black market rate, whatever you want to call it, that is exchanging for between 702 and 711 Naira to the dollar. 426 to 711 to the Naira. Help us understand how our dollar really, I beg your pardon, how our Naira fell to that, that abysmally low level. I recall not exactly an eternity ago when Nigerians were complaining that the Naira is now 30 Naira to the dollar. This is a crisis. This is disgraceful. 30 Naira at the time. Now look at where we are. Prof, how did we descend to these depths?
Well, it's a combination of Nigeria relying mainly, if not only, on oil to earn foreign exchange, on crude oil. When you have a monoproduct economy in terms of foreign exchange earnings, the risk to which you expose your economy is that if anything goes wrong with the price of oil, it will affect the value of our legal tender, the currency, which is the Naira, because the oil sales are from where our foreign reserves are funded. And the main function of the foreign reserves is to safeguard the value of our currency, because it shows that we can pay for imports for several months, and that creates confidence in international trade. Where people begin to see the foreign reserves falling, and that happens where the price of oil goes low, or where the production of oil is very low, or where the price of oil may be high, but we are spending virtually all our income from it on subsidy, petroleum subsidy. Any of these circumstances creates a massive structural imbalance in the foreign reserves, and that affects confidence in the Naira. This is why the Naira has gone so low. Another major reason is weak economic management of the forex policy, foreign exchange policy by the central bank. Now, when I was a deputy governor of the central bank, between 2009 and 2014, I think we will remember that with the Naira was at about 160 to the dollar. We kept it within that range for 5 years. One of the reasons we were able to do so was to relax the ability of investors to bring in money and take out money. This also, I mean foreign investors, this creates confidence in the economy and brings in more inflows of foreign exchange and foreign investment. So the Naira responds to demand and supply forces. Where the demand for dollars is too much and there are not enough dollars, the price of the dollar relative to the Naira will continue to rise. That means the Naira is falling. That's what we have. Now we have these multiple exchange rates, the official rate and the parallel market rate. It's a reflection, again, of scarcity, and it's a reflection of bad economic management. Nigeria should harmonize its exchange rate policy. There should not be multiple exchange rates for different things. It creates exposure for arbitrage. Some people will get that money at 426 or 28 to the dollar, and they will go and sell it in the black market at 710 Naira. This will always happen once you create multiple exchange rates. So the CBN has been trying too hard in the wrong way to control, the price of the Naira in the forex market. There is too much state control, and it is creating room for a lot of arbitrage, a lot of fraudulent dealings in the market, and creating pressure on the central bank itself. So there are many reasons why we are where we are. It's a combination of things.
Thank you, Prof. You see, the way you explain it, when you say central bank is trying perhaps too hard in the wrong direction, we also hear that sometimes you can't leave our national currency to the vagaries of, market forces. You are in a much better position to tell us if that is a truism or not. And so from time to time, government will intervene in the matter. Right now, it is what it is. Yes. I don't think government can intervene. But as you are considering what I've just said, you must have heard, Prof, that on Wednesday, the regulators in Kenya decided to take subsidy off the price of their fuel altogether, resulting in what they are calling an unprecedented high of somewhere around, when you translate it to the Naira, maybe around 600 and something Naira for a liter of fuel. Could that happen to us?
It could and absolutely should happen in Nigeria. Let me actually explain what I mean. We cannot continue to subsidize imported petroleum with 4, 5, 6 trillion naira. Make nonsense of our fiscal management. Think that all Nigerian government and fiscal policy exists for is to subsidize the price of imported petrol. And we know there's a lot of fraud. We know there is a lot of fraud in the subsidy regime. So we need to remove the subsidy to save Nigeria's economy. It will increase the price of fuel. But what do? I have recommended that there should be a very significant investment in public transportation, in combination and collaboration between the federal and state governments to have subsidized transport systems throughout this country that are effective and can serve poor people. It will not take you more than 500 billion naira. Compare that to spending 6 or 7 trillion naira every year on subsidy. You cannot be subsidizing the fuel for the jeeps of Nigeria's big men. There's no need for that. All you have to do is to find a way to shield the poor from the impact of removing the petroleum subsidy. And then you go ahead and remove it. Because the problem with the Nigerian economy is that there is too much state control.
Because I was going to ask.
The market is dysfunctional.
Okay. Because I was going to ask, against what you've just said, that once you shield, protect the poorest in our society, then you can go ahead and do the needful. I was going to ask the economic management thing of Nigeria, how efficient you think it is for us to look towards what you've just suggested, in any appreciable length of time, that they will get together and do that thing, shield the poor, and then go ahead. And by the way, while I'm on this particular issue, a lot of people put a lot of hope in a private refinery that's coming up, the Dangote refinery. Maybe you could throw in your comment there too and think and tell us if this is misplaced or indeed it is good. It is a useful hope that when the Dangote refinery comes up, things will differ radically.
Well, the Dangote refinery will be very helpful from the point of view of the supply and availability of fuel, because we also have a lot of artificial scarcities. But it will not make the price of fuel cheaper, because it has to be economically sustainable. The Dangote refinery will operate in a free zone, which makes it an international company. So it will be, technically, it's like importing fuel into Nigeria, but it is inside Nigerian territory. But that territory, legally, is a free trade zone. So it will help in terms of supply and the availability of petrol, yes. But it will not really make fuel cheaper.
Okay. So the mere fact that it's homegrown, so to speak, we have the crude, we have the refinery, which they currently are sending out to be done and then bring it back in. You're saying, well, because it's in an economic free zone, things are not going to be radically different, because it's going to be just as if they were sending it out still and then bringing it back in.
But the difference is that the supply will be far more efficient.
Okay. Not necessarily cheaper, but efficient, more efficient, if I understand you properly.
Yes, we have to operate at the economic price of petrol. With the current subsidy, what you see is a lot of smuggling. Nigeria's petrol is cheaper than all the neighboring West African countries. Are those countries necessarily richer than Nigeria or better off than Nigeria? Why is it that people will smuggle petrol from Nigeria to Niger or Chad or Benin Republic? Because they will make profits there. So this distortion by a false posture that we are trying to protect the poor by subsidizing the price of petrol. If you allow petrol to be traded by several operators, eventually the price will fall. This is what happened with GSM. So we keep trying to create all these false narratives, and we keep ruining our economy. We say that we are trying to save the poor by subsidizing petrol, and a lot of crooks are getting rich from petroleum subsidy because they're submitting false claims, or they're making false claims about how many liters of petrol Nigerians consume every day. So you're just aiding criminality and corruption. Once you have all these government attempts to control the price of things, it creates a lot of corruption. And invariably, the poor people will suffer.
Now, I'm sure you must have given this question, following from what you've just concluded with. You must have given it a lot of thought, since I don't know if it still is good, but there was a time when you aspired to, vie for the highest office in the land. The question that you referred to earlier of government doing its job of shielding the poorest among us, shielding the poor so that other things can be done. I wonder how optimistic that you are that those that are at it are doing the best that they can do. Let me put it that way. Not just a credible job, but the best that they can do.
Well, the fact of the matter is that Nigeria's economy is not effectively managed, it's not well managed, and it's not competently managed. I think that as we go into 2023, the whole economic posture of a government matters a lot. And a lot of times it starts from the top. So depending on who comes into Nigeria as the next president, our hope is that they will pay a lot more focused attention on the management of Nigeria's economy. Appoint a very competent team of economic managers. Have an economic philosophy that is clear. Have a consistent policy that derives from that philosophy that is also clear. If you notice, recently, one of the presidential candidates, I think it was Atiku Abubakar, spoke at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, bringing out his own economic vision. That, and then we know that Bola Tinubu has a date with the same group sometime in October. We know that Peter Obi also has a date with the same group. So it will be very interesting to hear their economic plans and how they actually intend to turn around the Nigerian economy. But when Atiku made his presentation, a debate began because Atiku is clear and unapologetic that the government has very little business in business. That is his own position. Someone like Tinubu is known to believe more in a governed economy, a stronger role for the state in managing the economy towards a predetermined place. These are different economic philosophies, and they should be thoroughly debated and assessed by Nigerians. Every economy that has done very well has tended to respect the market principles. When the hand of the government is too heavy, distortions come into the market. But the government cannot be totally absent from the market. Sometimes it may have to intervene. That is, part of it. For example, there were a lot of privatizations done in Nigeria, but we know, like the privatization of the power sector, but we have seen that they have essentially failed. So is it because the private sector economy is not? No, it's not that. It's because certain fundamentals were not taken care of in that privatization. And the companies were not necessarily sold to the most competent economic managers or business managers. Nigeria is a rent-seeking economy where state assets are disposed based on man, no man. Those who have connections with the government buy them, but they may not be competent to run those assets. And so you begin to have asset stripping. So the problems of the Nigerian economy are very, very intensely political. I want to emphasize this.
And I think that sort of explains, at least, no matter how hazy it would be to me, a non-expert, part of what you've just said that earlier, which is to the effect that Nigeria's economy is not competently managed. Because I was going to ask you that, look, economic experts like yourself, they abound in this country. We don't have a shortage of them. So I think the Office of the Vice President is supposed to be in charge of the economy along with some other organs. And so I was going to ask, so what is, until you said that it is intensely political, I was going to ask, what therefore is the problem when we are surrounded by experts? It's like water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Apologies to whoever.
Let me tell you.
Sorry. Oh, you didn't hear me?
Yeah. Let me tell you what the problem is.
Okay.
The problem is the political class in Nigeria and the political leadership in Nigeria. The political leadership themselves are not economically competent. And no country can make progress beyond the competence or incompetence of its political leaders. If you have technocrats and economic experts, but they're making recommendations that remove opportunities for corruption for politicians. In a country like Nigeria, many of those political leaders will sit on those recommendations. They'll sit on those ideas because they have removed opportunities for rent and rent collection by them. When I say rent, I mean rent, oil rents, for example.
Economic rent.
You know? Yes, rent is just an economic term used for people acquiring the resources of the state for private purposes using political power. So until you have political leaders who are economically knowledgeable and competent,
not to mention patriotic,
they appoint the right technocrats, then you're on the right track. And they have the political will to listen to that economic advice. But they themselves have enough knowledge to interrogate that advice. Then you're making progress.